I'm James Gardner, host of Your History, Your Story, a podcast for everybody who loves stories about interesting people and events told by those who uncovered them from within their own family trees. This, we hope, will inspire you to discover and celebrate your history and your story. In this episode of Your History, Your Story, we'll be speaking with Terrie Magro, co-founder of the Michael Magro Foundation. Back in 2004, Terrie and her husband Paul faced an unimaginable situation when not one, but both of their two young sons were diagnosed with cancer. While their younger son Marc recovered, their older son Michael lost his battle with leukemia at age 13, just months after being diagnosed. During the tumultuous emotional time their family faced during both their sons' illnesses, Terrie and Paul also observed the enormous stress, strain, and life disruptions other families of children with cancer were experiencing. Seeing a great need to help these families, Terrie and Paul's hearts were moved to begin the Michael Magro Foundation in 2005 with a mission to better the lives of children with cancer, pediatric cancer survivors and their families, as well as other chronic pediatric illnesses. Terrie Magro will be joined by board member Dawn Dardzinski, and together they'll share their passion for the work of the Michael Magro Foundation and will discuss their hopes and vision for the foundation's future. I'd now like to welcome Terrie Magro of the Michael Magro Foundation to our show. Welcome, Terrie.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to have you on our show to talk about a foundation that does incredible work to help families of children with cancer. And we're just thrilled to have you to talk about the amazing things that you're doing. Really, it's just a pleasure to have you. Tell us about your son, Michael, and his brother, Marc, and their story and how your lives really changed 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's incredible. Incredible, James. I say to people, your life can change on a dime. And honestly, that's exactly what happened. I had two relatively healthy boys that only went to physicians when it was a school physical, the regular shots, camp physicals. And then absolutely out of nowhere, my son, Marc, who was 11 years old in 2004, presented with an enlarged lymph node, but it was just a lump. And that's how we had described it to the pediatrician. And fast forward, studies being done, they diagnosed him with Hodgkin's lymphoma. So the day before his 11th birthday, which was St. Patrick's Day in 2004, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And we were sent right over to a pediatric oncologist, which just blew me out of the water. My background, I'm a registered nurse and a nurse case manager. So clinically, I thought I was just going to fall to the floor when I got that diagnosis and had to call my husband, Paul, to meet us. And Marc was going through his routine of chemotherapy and radiation. And we go through a couple of months. That was March, and now we're in the end of May. And Michael presented with flu-like symptoms, brought him to the physician. Turns out they diagnosed him with pneumonia the first week of June. So we're treating him for the pneumonia, and the pneumonia got worse instead of better. So a repeat chest x-ray showed us that there was something there that they hadn't seen previously. And that brought the diagnosis of leukemia to the forefront. So Marc was diagnosed March 17th of 2004 with Hodgkin's, and Michael in June 8th, actually, of 2004 with leukemia, and now is in cancer treatment at the same time. So you talk about changed lives. Paul and I didn't know which direction to go. Paul had a spreadsheet going with medications and who was going to radiation, who was going to chemo. It was, it altered the whole family dynamic for sure. And it's a tough journey. It's a tough journey to have to go through.
You know, I think of the devastation. You go about your lives, you've got sports practice and preparing lunches and friends coming over and, as you said, camp and stuff like that. And you think, hey, this is going to be life for, the next whatever, 10 years, and you
Mhm.
get this, not one diagnosis, but two diagnoses that must, as you said, they're just absolutely overwhelming to you and your husband. So when you were reacting to that, now you had two sons who required treatments. How did you balance all that? You talked about a spreadsheet, but how did you balance all the care that you had to give like quickly to
Mm.
the boys? And by the way, carry on the rest of your life with employment and things like that.
That's the tricky part, and that's, as Dawn will talk about a little bit too. That's the part that gets everybody, because it's very difficult to hold down a full-time job and have a child going through cancer treatment, because the treatment course is written as national protocols. So everybody's following the same protocol for that particular type of diagnosis that the child has received, but they react differently. So the human body is very different, right? So what you think may be just a blood draw and a quick visit, and you can go on to work and they can go back to school or go home or do whatever, can turn into, from a 20-minute potential appointment, to 5 or 6 hours, because their blood levels were off, their white count was up, something else happened, and now they need to be transfused with a unit of blood. So it's very hard for anybody to be able to anticipate any of that. So you end up you take the time off, you resign or take a leave of absence. So Paul had the healthcare insurance. Paul is a chef, and at the time was teaching culinary arts. So he had the full-time benefits. I worked for a company based in Virginia, and the benefits that he had were better. So I did not have the health benefits. So, and being the nurse, I was kind of in charge of that day to day. So I was the one at chemotherapy. My father was in radiology. He did Marc's radiation. So he went back and forth with Marc. I was back and forth with Michael. Michael ended up in the hospital longer, and Marc never stepped foot in the hospital. His entire treatment course was done as an outpatient. But Michael, just it spiraled in the wrong direction almost from the beginning. So that was the difficulty. He was in the intensive care unit. He was back on the floor. He was home. He was back in the intensive care unit. So I have a couple of very, very supportive nurse friends who were there with me most of the time. If I wasn't there, they were there every night. Somebody slept with Michael, whether it was Paul, me, my father, a nurse, somebody was with him, just to give that extra comfort to him. But as you walk in that journey, you talk to everybody, and I do talk to everybody. So in talking to them, I realize how devastating financially, emotionally, this disease is to the family. And you don't keep up with the bills. That's the problem. So Michael he ended up getting respiratory wise, he was very compromised from the pneumonia. So he ended up on a ventilator the last week of his life. And that Sunday, when they put him on the vent, Marc had his last radiation treatment that Monday. So it was a horrible week. Marc went out with my brother and my sister-in-law to their Southampton home to spend a couple of days. We called him back on Thursday because we saw this was going in a very bad direction. By that point, we had already signed a DNR, and it was, it was devastating, devastating. So we got Marc back. And fortunately, he was able, Mike was on a ventilator, so he couldn't talk, but at least we were there to talk to him, and Marc was there as well. And then he passed that Friday at 7:30 at night. So that was, now I have, my family, a cancer survivor who's 11 and just lost his brother. They were 28 months apart. Within 4 months of each, 4 months, he was sick, not hardly at all, Marc, and then Michael. And within 8 weeks, Michael passed. It was just like, what just happened here? But, it's like crazy. Can't wrap your head around it.
And you and your husband are dealing with this horrendous loss, but at the same time, as you mentioned, Marc lost his brother, and you had to comfort him, who had just, gone through the illness himself. At some point in time, you mentioned about you ran into people who were going through similar things? They were healthcare workers. Were there other families that you spoke with who were going through similar things?
Mostly families, because you really get to know each other. And I still keep in touch with some of those families. Some have had very successful outcomes, and some have also lost. After losing Mike, we had gone to some parent therapy just to with the loss of a child, and I felt that it's helpful to a lot of people. It just wasn't filling what I wanted. I wanted more. I wanted to be able to keep his name alive. I wanted to be able to help people. It's just my nature in general, and not be sitting in a space where years later I'm still talking about the death as though it happened 15 days ago. It just didn't sit with me. So I said to Paul, we're going to start a foundation, a nonprofit foundation. We're going to help these people, because we were fortunate in many ways, James, because my job did not, they told me I was not going to take a leave of absence. I worked at that point remote, which was, a lot of people didn't even hear of it at that point. But the company was in Virginia, so I had a New York territory. I had a lot of different outlets around me that could help. So my boss was, just take your computer, utilize the time in the hospital, and just try and calm down. And so, I had that. I wasn't falling behind as far as some other people were, but I realized how devastating it was as I'm listening to all of these stories, and cars are getting repossessed, and mortgages aren't getting paid, and lights are getting turned off. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. I mean, they're trying to focus on a sick child. They're trying to hold the other siblings in the family together, and they're getting hit with all these horrible notifications. So that was how we started. We decided that the mission of this foundation was going to be to help these families directly. It's not a research base. I'm not building brick and mortar on a hospital. I really just 19 years into this, that is exactly what we do. We pay a lot of bills, and that's kind of how we started.
Well, having gone through this situation yourself and speaking with others, I would imagine there's all sorts of daily life things that are put on hold because of the sick child. And there's a lot of little things I think that we take for granted.
Yeah.
Being able to stop at the grocery store, like as you mentioned, be able to balance our checkbook, or to an employer is not so understanding and doesn't want you taking any more time off or what have you. I listened to another interview that you did, and you spoke about somebody who had I think a toddler who was not the patient, but the mother hadn't been able to go do grocery shopping. Something
Yeah.
about orange. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, one of the things we started to do was, in order to, just to back up a second, in order to vet these families to be the people that are receiving our financial assistance, we work with social workers and child life specialists, which are people that are prepared to work with these children in these different situations. And they had asked me a couple of times, would you be able to donate gift cards to a grocery store, to a gas station, help people with parking, things that we hadn't thought about at first. So, you learn through this journey. We're always learning. And this one social worker had called me from the pediatric clinic one day, and she said, I just have to tell you, we had a family here, and the toddler was asking if her mom can buy orange juice. And mom had said, I don't have the money to go to a grocery store. I'm not really sure if we're going to be able to have food tonight. I don't know what I'm doing. And with that, the mom said, I will call the social worker and see if that lady who drops off the gift cards has any gift cards for us to go to Stop and Shop. That's the main store here that we deal with. And when she came to the clinic, picked up the gift cards, and then the kid just looked at her with these tears in her eyes, and she said, can we have orange juice? Can we buy orange juice now? That's all the kid wanted. It was her sibling that was sick. It wasn't her. And she just couldn't understand what was going on and why it was so difficult to now have breakfast and have orange juice. So something as simple as that just brings a smile to people's faces. And that's basically what we're all about. If we can just bring some dignity and smiles to people, that's really what we're all about, because that hits home.
You've really found a need that maybe some people overlook. As you mentioned, there's a lot of money that can go to research, which is incredibly
Yeah,
important. But what about those people going through the day-to-day struggles? Even parking. You go to the hospital enough times and you're paying a certain amount of money each time you're going. Or what about other transportation like Uber or things like that?
right.
Those are things that maybe would slip through the crack. Like you're assuming people can put their lives completely on hold to take care of their child, but there's other things. There's bills. Some people let bills slip uh, just because they're busy
Yeah,
with their
right.
lives, not this kind of busy, like totally redirected towards taking care of their child. And I
Yeah,
think it's fantastic. So, what you and your husband make this decision to start the Michael Magro Foundation to meet this incredibly important need. It's one thing to have the concept of helping. How do
right.
you start something like this? How do you actually put the boots on the ground and get it going?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hard part for a lot of people. It was actually something that I felt fairly comfortable with, because in my clinical career, I had switched over to medical sales. So I did a lot of work with hospitals and private industry. And in that, there was always an ask for fundraising and for the vendors, which was what I was at that point, to help the hospitals. So I had worked so much with variety of different places, helping them with galas and golf outings. And so I said, I could do this. I have the concept. I'll just grab a couple of people that are willing to just work at it, and we'll build it. And Paul was like, I don't know where to start. I said, I know where to start. And I said, let's start with like a tasting, something that we can just bring a lot of people for a fun event. Being a chef, you have a lot of great connections. So that's how we really started it. He reached out to a chef friend of his who had run tasting events where you just bring a bunch of restaurants together, and people pay a fee, they taste, and they go around, and there's raffles. And there was the beginning of our fundraising work, was for an evening of tasting and giving, is what we called it. And the other thing we did was we started with 3-on-3 basketball and just raised some money for a scoreboard, because Michael's two sports were basketball and lacrosse. And at Hicksville Middle School, where he was attending at the time, there was not a outdoor scoreboard for on the lacrosse field. So it helped, because now that scoreboard was used for many things, and the community came together. It's amazing, James, how the communities come together in these instances, not only ours, but just about everybody's. I mean, people just don't know what to do first, and they're so willing and so want to help. So that's how we started. And then we incorporated. A friend of mine's an attorney and an accountant, and we just started a board. We pulled together some people, registered as a 501(c)(3), and we got off the ground running. And that was basically, we're all still not paid. It's 100% goes back into, well, 90 cents on a dollar goes back into the foundation. But everybody was volunteering. We were all working full time, so it was kind of interesting. But we all made the best of it through those years, and here we are today, 19 years into it.
That's wonderful. And I'm thinking, you leveraged your own skills and talents and your husband's, and then you started to lean into the community. I mean, how did you get the word initially? How did you get that word out to the community to build a base of both, I guess, volunteers as well as donors?
Yeah. It was really the moms in the neighborhood, because they were in elementary school and middle school. And so, neighbors and friends and sports people, everybody, each other because you're involved in so many things. We were very involved in their school activities and the PTA. So, they knew what we were going through when the boys were sick, and then they certainly knew what happened afterwards. And everybody was there to say, yeah, let's do something. We've got to turn this lemons into lemonade, but we've really got to be able to support these families in our community and others, because this hit home. I mean, all of these people that are now, our friends in the community, they all have children the same age. And so they're looking at their 13-year-old and saying, by the grace of God, he's healthy and everything's okay. So I'm all in. And that's exactly what they were, all in. And that's what we've seen over the years. A lot of those people have moved, and their children now are 30. Michael actually last year turned 33, and Marc is turning 31 on March 18th of this year. So their friends now are very involved. Their parents themselves, some of them, working in companies. And so now we have this young professional board that's coming right behind us.
That is wonderful. How is Mark doing, by the way?
So Marc has a little bit of a hiccup. The problems with chemo and radiation are some long-term effects. So he 5 years ago had an issue with his thyroid and had half of his thyroid removed, and just recently has found that the other half of the thyroid is not functioning as well, and he has a lymph node that's a little bit in question. So he has some upcoming surgery to take care of that that's going to occur later this month. But chemotherapy and radiation do the trick, and that's what we have, and that's what we know. Immunosuppressed drugs that are out now. But with every drug, as you know, there's lots and lots of adverse reactions and things that happen. So they're killing good cells as well as the bad ones. And afterwards, there are definitely long-term effects. So that's a big piece that every family goes through, whether it's an adult or a child. So you never quite know down the road what may be in store for you. So you're always on your guard, is always up, and you're always, following up with different things. But he's doing very well. He's doing very well in work and his personal life. So we're so proud of him. And he's very involved in the board as well.
I figured he was, and
Yeah.
my prayers are for him to come through this latest hiccup with flying colors.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So Terry, what would you say are some of the biggest events that you do, and any that you have planned for the immediate future?
Well, we just kicked off our fundraising year with 3-on-3 basketball, so we've kind of kept that in the family, so to speak. Jimmy Montana, one of the board members, runs that, and a lacrosse event. So we just had that on Saturday. We kind of dubbed it Magro Madness, just in the March Madness kind of focus. And we raised 13,000, which was great. Sponsors is really what brings in the lion's share of our funding for all of these events, and that's really the backbone of what helps us. Next up is golf. That's our next big one. That's really a big one. Golf is probably our largest fundraiser. Our tasting event is now in October, so that really does well. We had started it in September, which was pediatric childhood cancer awareness month, but September is a very busy month for a lot of things, so we moved it to the beginning of October. And then we do a car show. We'll do a lacrosse tournament. We've done some local things. Dawn has done things on her block parties that we did for years, and each one of these events raises awareness. A soccer event, it brings in different people. My goal was to involve people of all ages and different likes. People that come to the car show are not necessarily the golfers. The golfers come to the tasting. It brings all different walks of life together. And that's what's blended to have this beautiful family of volunteers that we now have, and sponsors and donors.
Oh,
It's
that's terrific.
partners. They're
Yeah.
definitely partners.
Now, Michael was a big sports fan, right? So this is very appropriate that some of these events are sports events.
Correct. Yeah, that was a
Ah,
big thing.
that is great. So as far as identifying these folks in need, can you tell us a little more about how do they find out about you as far as people in need?
Yeah, so the social workers is who we network with the most, and it's pediatric oncology social workers. And we started with the 3 hospitals on Long Island, as you would imagine. The boys were treated at the Cancer Center for Kids, which at the time was Winthrop University Hospital. That's now NYU, Langone Health, Long Island. So it's through the Perlmutter Cancer Center on Long Island, Stony Brook, Cohen's Children, and then in the city, it's Memorial Sloan Pediatric, Columbia Presbyterian, and NYU Hassenfeld. And then from those social workers, they started to work with us, and then they told their social worker friends, there's this great organization on Long Island, you've got to touch base with them. So they brought us into New Jersey, Philadelphia, Connecticut. So we're now we're in Texas, Florida, California, Cincinnati, all children's hospitals. We're in about 9 or 10 different states. So every year we grow a little bit more organically through these social workers. They vet the families, then they call me. I end up getting a letter of necessity from the physician and the social worker for the needs that they have, and they scan their bills to me, and I pay direct to the vendor, whether it's, Oregon Water or, PSEG on Long Island. It doesn't matter. We just pay it direct. Yesterday, I got a call from a family at Presbyterian, New York Presbyterian, and their phone bill was overdue. It was literally a 200 and some odd dollar bill. So that for me to pay it online, I would have had to go through them. So I usually send a check or a credit card. They wouldn't accept the credit card, and a check would take too long. So I had to Zelle them the money to her husband to end up paying the telephone carrier. So we take the time to work with the social workers and the families to really navigate so that they're not sitting there still scared that the phone's going to get cut off. You cut off someone's mobile phone at this point in their life, when it's their lifeline to their doctor, to the hospital, to everything that's going on. Without that phone, she was desperate. The woman was hysterical crying. It's like I have to have a phone. So Zelling it, at least now her husband was able to put the money into his money in his account and send it right over to the carrier, and move from there. So we take the time. We're a group that works together, and I review most of what comes in, but we all work together, and it's not a big corporate headache for people to get their money from us. We don't ask for financials. Honestly, I don't really care how much money you make, because people live at whatever level their financial status is. So you could be making 50,000 or 250,000. You're in the same boat. Your mortgage may be a little higher than the $50,000 person, but you can't make it and they can't make it either. So what's the difference? And financials go back. So what good is your tax return from a year ago when you're in this situation right now? What you made then and what you're making now is two different numbers. So I am very cognizant of that. I know how much paperwork these people go through, so we try and streamline it. But we have a tremendous rapport, and I'm on the phone and emailing with social workers from all different hospitals all day long. That's the bulk of what I do all day long, outside of networking.
Thank God for you and your foundation. That is fantastic. Now, you've mentioned a couple times about directors. So you have a board of directors for your foundation.
I do. Thank God for them. I'm very happy to have Dawn on the call with us. I met Dawn in probably like 2015. Her cousin and I, just coincidentally friends, and she started telling me about her cousin who, had a tremendous philanthropic background and heart. And so I met Dawn, and we hit it off right from the get-go. And soon after, had asked her in 2016, Dawn joined our board. She owns a company called D2D Consulting Services, which is a technology management service company, which Dawn started in 2017. But her background is extensive. She's a project manager, a leader in her project manager field, a problem solver for sure. She helps me all the time. Spent many years in the financial service world and developing technology products. So I am very grateful to have Dawn on the board with me, and her connections and her thought process for corporations and involving them and having us get to the next level has been extraordinary and is really helping us to get to that next level. So, Dawn, thank you so much for joining today as well.
Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Full disclosure, Dawn is my dear cousin. Actually, she's my wife's cousin. I'm a cousin-in-law, but we're still cousins. And Dawn told us about the Michael Magro Foundation and about you, Terrie. And we just fell in love with the cause and what you are doing to help families of children with cancer. But Dawn, let me speak to you and ask you a couple of questions. So you're a board member. So obviously you feel very strongly about the foundation. Can you tell us what it means to you and what is some of your vision for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. As Terrie mentioned, I love doing volunteer work. I volunteer prior to meeting Terrie. We would do a lot through our local church to help out families there. And, we unfortunately, as a family, have seen a number of cancer members in our family, right? And because of that, I know full well how insurance covers the costs for the patients, but there's so many other ancillary issues that follow around, right? Transportation. We actually have a family member in Middletown, New York, who was 4 years old when she was diagnosed with Wilms tumor. Middletown does not have a pediatric oncology facility. The closest one to them is in White Plains Hospital in Valhalla, which is about an hour away. And when her white cell count is so low, they have to take her by ambulance, which is upwards of $6,000 each way, which is not covered by insurance, right? So, fortunately, we have an amazing family. We pool all our resources together to make sure this 4-year-old, who is now 6, just finished, she had to go through 2 rounds of chemo and now radiation, just finished her last treatment about 2 weeks ago. But imagine for 2 years having to burden the cost. Mom had to lose her job because of all the time that she took off from work, had to find something else. New job doesn't allow for all of the time to take off from work, so, and she's not there long enough in order to be able to get paid sick days. How do you cover the costs? Oh, and by the way, there's other children in the house. You need to put food on the table. And so we ourselves were impacted by what it means to be a financial burden when somebody is going through a cancer treatment. The assumption is that it's always covered by insurance. How could you have all these bills? But it's not. It truly, truly is not. One of the first initiatives that we worked on with Terrie when I became a board member was a child in our local school district has EB. So pediatric oncology is one, but there's also other patients who are chronically ill. He has EB, which is a rare skin disorder. And there's only 2 hospitals in the country that can help him. One is in Rochester, Minnesota, and the other is at Cedars-Sinai in California. Insurance doesn't pay for all of that travel. Insurance doesn't cover the cost of the special wheelchair that needs to be customized for him. So we started out with these little fundraisers that grew into this community development and support. And honestly, I started doing philanthropic work when I was a teenager. But when I started having kids and I saw the needs from their friends and what the community needed, and then I met Terrie, to me, it was just such a huge match made in heaven because it's something that we've experienced as a family, but it's also something that brought the community together and taught my kids what it meant to be giving back and volunteering and being good citizens, right? We're not raising, little elitist children. We're raising kids that want to be a part of their community and want to give back and help. And from 3 years old, we've had our kids who are now 17 and 14 volunteering and helping wherever and whatever we can do to help out in the community. So for us, it's a fight that we go through because it's something that's near and dear to our hearts. And to know that we're helping and supporting the Magro Foundation at the same time is just a huge bonus. So it's something that's internally fulfilling for us and then for us as a family.
Well, that's terrific. And it is a match made in heaven for sure. I can see that, having sat down with the 2 of you last month and just seeing the passion that you both have for the direction of the foundation. So, Dawn, can I ask you as a board member, what are your thoughts as far as the vision for the future? And then I'll come back to you, Terrie, right afterward.
So as Terrie mentioned, I own my own management consulting company. So I'm always thinking of operations, always thinking of how we can make improvements, what we can do to make things better. Fundraisers are an amazing way because you get to bring the community together. But a golf outing is one time a year. The tasting event is one time a year. And unfortunately, these families and these children need consistent support all throughout the year. And as Terrie mentioned, we're now in about 9 or 11 states, and the need continues to grow and grow and grow. So my thoughts were, let's get corporate sponsorship. We have a lot of companies that we work with that are looking for opportunities to do local community outreach as well as philanthropic type support to different organizations. Many of them donate to the larger, more well-known organizations nationally, like, St. Jude's and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So my thought was, why don't we, communicate the benefits of the Magro Foundation and see if we can start getting donors. Last year, corporate sponsorships are a little harder. You have to go through a number of red tape. But last year, we were able to get 2 corporations to be able to make donations to the Magro Foundation. And as my team goes out into the fields and they work with clients, we continue to communicate the story more and more and more so that we can try and get repetitive donors so that we can continue to help these families that are in such desperate need going forward. And with a broader outreach as well.
Again, the need is there all year long.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a seasonal thing. It's all year long. Terrie, did you want to add to that? And what are your thoughts about the vision of the foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. Dawn captured most of it, but absolutely the needs are all year long. We tell people all the time they want to donate toys at Christmas time, which is fabulous, but we need toys all year long. So we're asking a lot of the corporations that are right here and local to us to contemplate working as a team and kind of adopting the foundation, the Michael Magro Foundation, and helping us to support some of these needs on a regular basis, where they'll run a spring toy drive, they'll do a backpack drive to help. Something as simple as buying a backpack and filling it with supplies sounds like it's an easy task, and it is, but it's so much of a relief for these parents because every child getting one of these backpacks, and maybe 2 for the sibling if the social worker wants to give 2, they're upwards of $60-$80 to get a backpack. But these companies come together and they want to have, what I like is the partnership and the continuing relationship with them. So I want them to be able to do things like that on a smaller level. We do gift card drives because all year long we're buying gift cards to gas stations, grocery stores, the kind of the Target, Walmart. You mentioned before Uber. That's a big one because, some of these people are taking public transportation. Amazon. We like to give Starbucks. We like to give these gift cards to the siblings as well, if we can. If we have some extra Amazon, Starbucks, things like that, where they can just go out and enjoy hanging out with their friends and having coffee at the local Starbucks. They ask mom and dad for, $20 to go out and do this. And when they're trying to pull their resources to put food on the table, figure out the medication that they have to buy, clothe everybody, do all of these things, pay the bills, $20 for Starbucks sounds frivolous to them. And so then their first reaction is to say no. And now you start to have a lot of animosity within the family unit. So if we can provide those cards where they can say, yes, here's a $25 gift card to go to Starbucks, it just pulls everybody back together, and it just gives everybody a sense of feeling good, because the parents don't want to say no either. They want to be able to be there for everybody. So little things as well as the big corporate donations, those, the corporate is going to sustain us. We gross about 325 a year, 325,000. Our goal is to get to 500 by the end of this year, the beginning of next year. so that we can do the bigger payments to some of these families. Some of the mortgages are coming in, they're 3,000-4,000. I can't do that whole mortgage, so I'll either combine with another organization, or the social worker will say, you pay half, somebody else will pay half, type of thing. We want to be able to pull that whole mortgage off their plate. So the corporate donations are really, really, really important. The other thing is follow us on social media, little things, like us, share, comment, get it out to your people as well, because you never know who knows who. And those connections through networking and social media are very positive. A lot of companies have matching gifts, so you can donate and they'll match on a matching program, do a monthly, quarterly, whatever type of donation you may be able to do through your company. All of those things are very helpful. And I know that's what's going to keep sustaining us. Next year is our 20th anniversary of the foundation. The actual foundation this year is 19 years, and the boys were diagnosed 20 years ago, but the foundation started in 05. So we really want to make a splash in 2025 and really be able to say yes to every single request that comes in. I hate saying no, and I hate having to back down on the amount of money that people need, but we're trying to help as many people as we can.
I like it when you said, the bigger things like helping out a little with the mortgage, but also those little things like a Starbucks could mean a little normalcy in the
Mhm.
middle of a huge storm, a little comfort in the storm. So you've got both ends. You're trying to attack this beast, right? And
Yes.
give people a sense of comfort and somebody cares.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, we even did. So my team pulled together. We have clients that have some relationship with Oriental Trading and Vistaprint, and we pulled together our resources to be able to create 50 distraction bags, which are these great little backpacks with toys when kids are getting ready to go in for surgery or for treatment. They don't necessarily have their phones with them or any type of digital device. And we want to keep them from being nervous. So we get them little fidget toys or Rubik's cubes, from back in the day. I love getting toys that were around when I was a kid, or little puzzles and coloring books, just to keep them occupied. And it truly is, a 25 cent or a 50 cent coloring book, and you buy, 100 of those, and you send them over to us, and we can put those in those distraction bags. That little bit of joy before having to go into something scary eases their minds tremendously. And you wouldn't think that that 50-cent toy will do a lot, but it does. And so my team loves doing that, pulling it together. We're reaching out to all of our real estate clients. We support financial services industry, real estate, healthcare, and we're pretty much industry agnostic, but those are our largest within real estate and financial services. And imagine you get a big company with 3,000 employees, everybody gets that one 50-cent toy. You can do a tremendous effort and provide a tremendous support to a child who's getting ready to go in for probably the scariest part of their life. So, it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't have to be these big $1 million donations, although we won't turn away from it. But, it's even the little things that really, really matter. Just being able to, a lot of hospitals don't even have, cafeterias in them. Where do they go to eat, right? When you're sitting with your child all day and you yourself need to keep your strength and nutrition up. We know that at Valhalla Hospital, they had a Panera. So with our own family members, the only thing there was Panera. And that gets very expensive after a while. And then when it's you and your husband, it's the parents and other siblings visiting. So maybe you have 3 or 4 people having to get a sandwich. We've seen where families are splitting a sandwich or splitting a salad that are small to begin with because they can't afford the cost of how much it is to buy food within the what's available in the hospitals. So even just getting a Panera gift card so that they can have a solid meal while they're spending 8, 10, 12 hours out of the day supporting the child who's sick is tremendous, really tremendous. And such a help for someone, and they're so grateful for the support that you provide. Hopefully it makes that, for us at least, it's infectious when you see the gratitude that comes in through the letters that Terrie gets from the families that we've supported.
Oh, absolutely. I would imagine that that just must motivate you, Terrie. Wouldn't you say that really, that must really motivate you?
It sure does. I mean, that's what keeps us going, every single day, because we see all those little small acts of kindness that really, really add up. And to Dawn's point, we have a account with a deli, coffee shop type of place in Mineola for the parents and the families of the kids at the Cancer Center for Kids. We have a pharmacy account because some of their pharmacy bills aren't covered by insurance, and those add up. There are so many little things that could be done, and believe me when I tell you, they all make a big difference. They really, really make a big difference. You mentioned St. Jude, and just to go back to that, we do work with one or two of the St. Jude's clinics. They have 9 clinics in the United States, so St. Jude pays for everything in the hospital, but the same issues occur with those families that occur with everyone else, and that's paying all those other bills. So we networked ourselves with a couple of social workers from St. Jude clinics in the United States, and we work with them as well. Our goal moving forward, Dawn and I have talked about this many times, is to target companies and corporations in these different states that we're working with so that we can support those families in those particular states when those donations come in. Speedway Children's Foundation just reached out to us, and their grant cycle has opened. So because we have a representation in Dallas, and that's where one of the Speedway locations is, we're going to apply for a grant, and that will be allocated specifically to that particular hospital. So
That's
we
great.
we do keep track of that.
Yeah. Terrie, how can people listening to this podcast find out more about the Michael Magro Foundation and how they can either volunteer to help or donate or whatever else is needed?
Oh, thanks. The most comprehensive is the website, which is michaelmagrofoundation.com. And my email is tmagro@magrofoundation.com. So all that information is on there. Dawn's information is on the website as well. So please, feel free to reach out to us. And if it's something that you want to donate specific for a specific area that you live in, we're happy to do that. I have a pastor who said he's sending a check this week for $1,000. He lives in the Newark, New Jersey area. And so the hospital that we work with in Newark will be the beneficiary of that. So we'll reach out to a social worker and navigate a family or two that we can help with that $1,000 donation. So wherever in the United States you are, give us a holler.
That's great. Now we're going to be posting your website in our show notes so people can navigate to that and find out more. And this has been a really good interview for me because I wanted to know more about what you did and how you work with your board and other groups and people who are willing to help and have a heart for what you're doing, which I can't see how you cannot have a huge heart for what you are doing, but you're actually, you put something together at a time when you were impacted so heavily. And my prayers are that your foundation just grows and grows and grows and helps more and more families. Terrie, last question for you. How has your work on this foundation over the last almost 20 years now, how has that helped you in your healing process?
So I think, the short answer, James, is it's brought us all together. So we work more as a family unit. A lot of times the families go in a different direction and they may not stay together, but we had the common ground of all wanting to be able to help because so much of the family and friends were involved when we were at the hospital, and they all saw the same things that we saw and talked to the same people. So they realized that need was greater than any of us had ever anticipated. So it's really and I can see a family just sending a message, getting involved after we've helped them. That's a big help for me because now these grateful families have come out of the disaster and the financial trauma that they were in, and they're now in a position to say, I want to help and pay it forward, so I want to work with you guys as well. And they'll make donations, they'll run some sort of an event, they'll do something to just help and give back. So that's really is a big piece of the healing process, and seeing, of course, all these kids that do so well. There is unfortunate circumstances, yes, but there's a lot that do very well. And just being able to pull the family together, to be able to talk to some of these moms and get them through the hard part. I do a lot of that when the social workers or the families will reach out. Sometimes it's the moms that reach out through the website, and that's how we get connected then with their social worker. Because when they reach out to me that way, I just answer them and ask them for a little bit more information, mostly the hospital social worker, so that I can then start a conversation. And so they've helped us to grow, unknowing to them, that they've introduced the mothers themselves, grandmothers, aunts, fathers have reached out. And so we've been able to grow this, and then to be able to work with them afterwards is really a joy.
Terrific. Dawn, do you have any closing words that you'd like to share?
Just that, most people think, oh, when they have to donate to a charity, it has to be a big thing. I cannot stress enough, even volunteers helping us with events, organizing something in your local neighborhood, doing something within your school, a school drive. If kids need volunteer work, we've been recruiting Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, everybody in there, under the sun to try and help us. It doesn't have to be tens of thousands of dollars. You will be surprised at how quickly those little $10, $20, $100 donations add up. And especially now, with economic times being the way they are, where just getting a gallon of milk costs $8 these days, like that little bit truly helps. And, if you can help, please do, don't hesitate, reach out. My contact information is on the website. Terrie's contact information is there. Reach out to us and ask for ways, even if it's not financial support. We take in-kind donations to help the kids. Reach out and help, and let us know how you want to help.
Well, thank you again, Terrie and Dawn, and thank you to the Michael Magro Foundation. On behalf of Your History, Your Story, I really want to wish you the very best for 2024 and beyond. And we will be following you and have your website in our show notes so people can find out more and help out where they can.
I appreciate it so much, James. Thank you. And Dawn, thank you for all that you do in introducing us to James and Kelly.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you both, and have a great day.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you for joining us for this episode of Your History, Your Story. You can connect with us on Facebook and YouTube at Your History, Your Story, or on Instagram and Twitter at YHYS Podcast. We'd love to hear from you if you have any questions, comments, or a story to tell. Be well, and God bless.